New recording.
Perfect. The bottom line is that I'm looking at what are the roles and functions of child and youth care workers in South Africa. What is the nature of child and youth care work? Whether child and youth care workers at tertiary level are well enough prepared, and we can maybe veer into the non-tertiary level as well, and what further knowledge and skills they may need, and so what would be a model for their training at tertiary level particularly. So that is really the breadth of the study. And so it really kind of starts at, so what do you think are the roles and functions of child and youth care workers in South Africa, and what is the nature of child and youth care work? And it's really just a sort of stream of consciousness kind of drop that I want to drop into that pond, for you to give your consideration.
At all levels, or to specifically talking tertiary?
I'm talking both levels, but but we can differentiate as we go as well.
Yeah, I think it has evolved a lot over the years. So as child and youth care workers have maybe only been residential, and then their context have expanded, the level at which they function has not been adequate in residential care. So if they have a qualification, their, I think, practice level just hasn't quite been that of good child and youth care practice. So I think definitely, having myself sat in a BTEC class, I don't think that what they are being taught is adequate to have the knowledge component, as well as enough practical understanding and insight into to be able to move into a residential care setting and immediately start working. I think and less even forget about management, although admin and management is a part of the component. It is I think the theory part might be, all the theories might be there, that's needed, but I think understanding the working with a child, and I think the combination and blurring of this sort of social work kind of stuff that's merged, it's crept into that qualification, I think has blurred things for some of the childcare workers who exit with that BTEC degree, specifically the one that now I was involved in. And also having now being in a situation where a lot of childcare workers with BTEC degrees come into the context of Isibindi Impilo, Isibindi, and all over. I think child and youth care work is not understood at what I would think the expectation, certainly from me, would be of somebody with a degree. I find that the people with an FET certificate somehow has a better understanding of the practice of child and youth care than the BTEC degree people.
Really?
Definitely. There's not a question. And I think if you, have to talk to Isabel as well, we're all saying that the child and youth care worker with the FET certificate trained by NACCW actually can enter the field working, where a BTEC degree person, not really. So I think that, for me, in terms of qualification, the role of child and youth care work.
Just in terms of, can I just interrupt you? So what do you put that down to? What do you put that down to in terms of what are the factors that actually impact on when you say that person is not ready to enter the field. But you're saying residential care or any other setting? Or are you saying specifically residential care?
I think both.
Okay.
No, any other setting.
Okay.
Both.
Okay.
And I think because I have been involved in those quality assurance, some of those things emerged even from there, that people with a BTEC degree and people with the FET certificate, they seem to actually function at different levels, but the FET certificate one, practice-wise, is better. Here, definitely, in Impilo. There is no question. Both Isabel and I'm seeing that. And what I think it is that you end up with trainers who are very good in terms of practice. They have worked themselves. They can understand. They have enough practical experience. They also, I think, have been the selection of how trainers are done for specific contexts have been good. So you would end up with somebody training you with a social work degree in a BTEC qualification, who has not had one day experience in a child and youth care setting. So you end up with somebody not being able to give child and youth care workers adequate, I want to say, not so much the knowledge, but adequate examples of theory into practice, and understanding that actually this is what differentiates child and youth care workers from social workers, because the merging of some of the messiness of the, I want to say, the theories or approaches that's coming through in the BTEC, I think is confusing people, so that when they get to practice level, they're unsure. Where the FET certificate is crisp and very well, I'm talking in ACCW training, very specifically trained by a child and youth care worker, for a child and youth care worker, for a specific context. And and for me that is very evident.
You said earlier on that you feel like they come in but they don't know child and youth care work. I mean, that you said earlier on, you kind of went off from there, but that's quite a profound thing to say. Yeah,
it's about child and youth care practice. So when you observe the two of them, and I think Isabel and I had the conversation, when you observe people who's been through the BTEC degree and you observe people who's been through the qualification, the child and youth care practice somehow is far clearer understood by that person on the ground, the FET certificate one. Where the other person, you have to there's a lot of helping them with stuff, a lot of articulating for them what it is that you have to do here. They write better reports, by far they write better. They definitely, there's almost an element, I want to say, of a little bit of project management that they bring in, that a person with an FET certificate generally doesn't have, except in unique cases. I'm thinking now specifically Marisha, quite unique with her. But generally we struggle with their writing skills. So just getting and managing administration as a whole, where your BTEC person can manage administration better, can hold the order and organizing of things like that. So I would say that at that FET level, a gap that is there is a component linked to maybe writing, maybe a component of organizing things, some I don't know, methodology or something, teaching them something around how to, if you become a project manager at that level, what kind of things you do in terms of project management. Because the reality is that in South Africa that does happen. You expect something from this person. We have at the moment people with an FET certificate who's a mentor. In fact, we have quite a few. So a mentor at that level who struggles with admin is not good for a project. So I want to say that's a gap for sure. But
the gap is, so the FET gap you're saying is the project management and the administration.
Yeah, we see
not
case
the practice.
management notes. They cannot even write proper case management notes.
Mm.
I mean, that's a very basic thing. That is a big gap in the FET certificate because they do case management. It's not, and it's like logging in a particular way, but they're not quite getting that logging actually needs to be a little bit different here.
But in terms of the degree people, you're saying, but the practice, they don't actually know what to do once they hit reality.
Yeah, they don't. Somehow they don't get. There's not enough of applying something into practice. Maybe their time in the actual experiential time in their degree is not enough, or the person teaching them doesn't have a broad or deep enough understanding of applying theory to practice, or it feels like that's some of the gaps. Those are some of the gaps that you have. Either the lecturer or then the practical exposure. Where obviously with your FET certificate there's a lot of practical. In fact, the majority is practical. And I think that whether at the moment even people are ready to somehow understand how these two should maybe merge or complement each other, or learn a little bit from the practice of child and youth care to become that practical learning, what do they call it, like the internship period. Now they do an internship in BTEC, in diploma, but I don't think it's enough. I think it's 6 weeks for the whole period. And somehow I think that's not adequate at all, and it's in one place only. So whatever goes wrong there is what they learn, as well as what goes right. And I don't know if I'm answering the question.
No, perfectly.
Adequately.
Then just the way in which we've got in the scopes of practice for the auxiliary and the professional level, they're slightly different in the regulations. And I mean, do you see a difference in kind of what the expectations are of people at these different levels in terms of in the field?
Well, certainly I have a different expectation of somebody who comes in with a 4-year degree as somebody who comes in with a 2-year certificate. Very different expectations. And in many instances, in both, the expectation is not met. But I think that it's a given that there will be different expectations. Whether the expectations are realistic in the current context of South Africa, I don't know, because we are implementing programs and working in contexts that are asking an enormous amount of people, and a sophistication that not one of our tertiary institutions can teach, because there isn't that sophisticated lecturer around who understands child and youth care. I think maybe one, but there isn't. I think the sophistication required at implementation level asks something far more in terms of training and in terms of the integration of a lot of the contexts into the learning. So contexts are so vast in this country and programmatically vast. So if you work in Isibindi or in
programs are so vast?
So if you're doing target-driven programs, if you, as a child and youth care worker, which is not new, you work in a context where there is a lot of stakeholder things that are child and youth care workers needing to be able to articulate to stakeholders what it is that I can offer this program, and they can't articulate what they do. Now I expect actually both levels to be able to articulate what I do, but it's not coming through. So I can maybe articulate some of the theories, then maybe say, yes, child and youth care, everybody can say child and youth care is life space work. Well, what the hell is life space work to anybody else? So what do I say next? And both levels struggle with that. It's not like the one gets it right and the other one doesn't as a standard. Both of them.
Is it?
Yeah. If they really have to start saying, what do I do in clinics as a life space of a child? What do I do in a school as a life space of a child?
Yeah.
Entering that. What is it that I can do? Never mind whether the program dictates it. So what has emerged, for instance, from Dreams is that in certain schools, child and youth care workers were immediately received well because somehow that mentor could articulate it like that, what we do. And I can almost like tell you where that came from and how well they articulated it. In other schools, it didn't happen quite like that. And I'm not saying it's all about articulation, but a lot of it links to articulation. So if I cannot say at any level what it is that I can offer you, who is going to buy me? And I think that in both the qualifications I certainly know in the BTEC, the 1 year that I did there was not a lot of focus on actually being able to say what you do as a child and youth care worker. That you had to really be able to almost like practically and theoretically describe it. Almost want to say at FET level there's a little bit more of that. FET is a little bit more integrated than the degrees quite fragmented, I thought. I thought our FET material is, and I can see it in how we work with the child and youth care workers, or how the child and youth care workers work in this program, specifically in Impila, far more integrated as the knowledge and theory and practice than in the BTEC. And I mean, there are many different examples. Like we would have a case study around a specific child, and somebody with an FET certificate, almost like they could far easier articulate what exactly it is they're going to do here. With this person as a child and youth care worker, and that the social worker does that one. The BTEC degree person couldn't. They didn't have that sense of the whole. Then multidisciplinary teams for them also are people at a higher level, where actually a multidisciplinary team can be very much on the ground people. It could be whoever is in this community involved in this child's life, where somehow they didn't quite understand that. So where's the social worker, the psychologist, all of those people? There are other people as well. If I think of the cases that we've worked with. Yeah, so I don't know. The expectation is there, but I think it is not always realistic in terms of the context of the country. And you have to, I think, always look at everyone.
I'm not with you when you say that the expectation is there on who to do what.
On the child and youth care workers.
To
actually come and to deliver at a level in a specific context, in a specific community, to a specific program. And I think it is often unrealistic, especially in a lot of the communities in South Africa. We expect a heck of a lot from the child and youth care workers. So their training is not equipping them for the context of where they're going to be working in. And I think sometimes they get a big fright. I mean, I remember a lot of child and youth care workers here who worked in rural settings coming to the city. And within the first week, they packed their bags and they were back. The first lot, especially the first lot. I think at least 10 people in that first month packed their bags and left again. It was, I think, this kind of context coming from there. So it's also where people
those would have been
from.
Auxiliary level child youth care workers.
Well, mostly auxiliary, but I think we've had maybe one person with a degree as well.
In that situation.
Yeah, less so, definitely less.
Yeah.
Percentage-wise, definitely less. But
yeah, so you're saying that those people would definitely have been exposed to a urban context, so
Yes,
therefore
yes,
they would
yes.
be also more comfortable.
Yeah.
But what you say is important, because you're saying that, like, that almost like the central core of the role that they're not understanding. Am I right? That there's something essential about child and youth care work that they don't.
Yeah.
They haven't gotten.
Yeah. I think that there's something, and again, I think maybe I'm talking too context specific, because I think that we get trained in a way that says child and youth care work happens, it's depth of work, it's a slow pace, it happens like this, and you can actually take your time with the family, work closely with them, be there every day, if once a week or whatever, and then do the depth of work that is needed. But actually, while Rome is burning and we have the volumes that we have, that's a luxury, actually. So I don't know whether there is a component in the role that we need to understand that requires a far more rapid, faster responsiveness from the child and youth care worker in learning how to move families faster through these processes. And we understand human development, but I think a therapeutic component and understanding trauma, and I mean, we don't understand trauma in child and youth care, we don't learn about it, and that's a big gap, big gap. Nobody in this team understands trauma. Nowhere did, not in the FET certificate nor in the qualification, did we learn about trauma and how to manage trauma and how to even respond. As the first responders, child and youth care workers know nothing. So teaching them about that, just in the context of any kind of context where we work, but specifically Isibindi Mpilo, Isikoleni even, and residential care, all of them. But your child and youth care worker who comes to a specific family or child who has got a I want to say an understanding that I'm entering here and I have time, has to somehow shift. Because an IDP takes a while to gather all the information to do a decent IDP. We're talking about anything from 2 to 6 months in our training. Now, you don't have 2 to 6 months. You have maybe 6 weeks if you're lucky. So more of a rapid risk assessment, understanding what are the immediate risks, what are the immediate short-term risks, medium-term, long-term risks. What do we plan for here? Who can help plan? Who can be in this child's life now? Who can be in there later? How do you position people in the child's life through referrals, through a follow-up over 6 months or whatever? And I think child and youth care practice, and now I'm talking case management, actually. And case management is not clear in any of these two, degree or the FET, because we understand that our role is we're there the whole time. So I'm the one constant, actually, as a child and youth care worker. Those days are gone. I feel there is no such a thing as I'm the constant in this family, in this child's life for maybe 6 months if I'm lucky. And that child and youth care role has to be almost a little bit redefined in terms of the professional time-bound relationship, what that means. How does a child and youth care worker understand to use all of their child and youth care work skills, almost like harnessed in a different way, if I can put it that way. It's like put together differently is sort of the immediate rapport, the response then to the situation's demand, and what are the child and youth care skills and knowledge and stuff that must immediately be harnessed to respond to this. And I think that is why I sometimes feel that if it is more, they do it better than the BTEC people. They somehow understand that role better. But again, it's I think the length that they want to take to do it just over too long a period. And it is the therapeutic work that we really want to do. Well, all these child and youth care workers, they want to engage more in the therapeutic kind of, I want to say, the healing, the family. That's really what they want to do. But it's not, it's a luxury that
it feels like what you're talking about is like a much greater intensity, in a sense, of sort of condensing of what needs to happen, and a much more intentional engagement as child and youth care. Is that
perfect? That's absolutely intentional. Intentional is always what we do with children, but it is intentional with a higher level, with a far greater level of understanding of what the intention is going to want to, what you want that to result in now. So the intentional, the time frame linked to that intention. So moving into my intention, then saying, okay, I have to have these things done in that time frame. So how then to move myself with whatever I can and whatever I can pull in, and take the child and youth care, I want to say, not approach, skills and knowledge and practice stuff into that. It's more dense, actually. It's the density that what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying it's coming right. Density and quicker, pulling that density together quicker, or respond from and I think the role is emerging for child and youth care workers in new contexts. I think there's a lot of that role that needs to be brought into our training, because I think the role, the explanations of roles of child and youth care workers through training, both BTEC and FET, is very thin. Because I think the role has evolved a lot.
So you see their roles and functions as being different in different contexts.
Yes, definitely. The beautiful one for me always is when a medical doctor discloses to a patient that they're HIV positive in the presence of a child and youth care worker. I mean, that is unheard of. That's a new role. So here I'm sitting with a doctor in a room, and the doctor asked for me to sit there so that I can actually offer the psychosocial support immediately within the health context, knowing actually this family has now, there's a trauma here, and there's a lot of things to be put in place. The added knowledge, though, is the gap there as well, because the knowledge links to a range of other technical, clinical information rather, around health, around things that they have to add in to their qualification and training if they're going to be specializing within a health context. So that knowledge, so it becomes in a way a little bit of a specialization. So if a doctor calls me in, expects then that next time he's going to get a patient back who is staying on their medication, who's actually understanding what they're dealing with. There's a patient who's far more willing to engage in their own physical healing. if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is one of the new functions, I want to say. Because nowhere do I know of anywhere else that actually you have a professional calling a child and youth care worker and saying, sit here because I'm going to traumatize this person now, and then you deal with the trauma afterwards. And then it's big. It's lifestyle issues. It's a mother with a family, so it's a lot of high-level, sophisticated child and youth care required. In the immediacy, in a horrible context, the clinic where you don't have a room to go and talk to them on a sofa. It's actually noisy with a lot of other people. So understanding how to hold that person in that context. Then go and sit in the queue with them to get their medication. And encourage them to come back for their medication. So it's all of those things, I think, that have shifted in this, I also want to call it this target-driven context, because all of that is linked to servicing a child and not making a child the target that you're counting, the number that you're counting. So it's also holding. So I've got this child.
I didn't understand what you said now. But servicing the child.
So I'm now the child care worker and working in a program where I have to deliver to 10 services to 10 children in one day. So this child now is my one service that I'm delivering to a service today. Now I have 9 more to do today. So in that context, I have to now actually decide how much attention and time can I give this person who actually needs about 3 hours of my time, but I've got about 30 minutes that I can give this person. So how do I optimize the time with this person for 30 minutes to go and reach my other 9 people and service them, because that's not what child and youth care workers are used to. So how does our training teach us a different service in a rapid environment where Rome is burning with the volumes? And I think if we don't shift, we will have more children die. That's literally the bottom line for me. If we don't bring a training in here that helps child and youth care workers, that holds them as well, to be able to look after themselves in that context, it's not going to last. Child and youth care workers are not going to last because of the harshness and the pressure and so their role and function, I think, has for the majority of the child care workers, I think, is shifting, because I think residential care is such a small component of the services we offer. Moving into all these other contexts just scales it to a place where we have to rethink.
But I mean, you have experience of residential care. It's almost like what you're talking about is like I just don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's just so different from residential care. It's still child and youth care work, but it's very different.
You know, it's different in that I feel I can do it, and I can see myself as a child and youth care worker moving between the two. I can do that. But maybe it is because I also understand residential care in its absolute essence as a place where there's also trauma and things happen where you have to respond fast and manage things very quickly before it escalates or whatever. It is a very different role, though. It is the role and function of a child and youth care worker in residential is very different to this role and function. It is, both of them are in the life space, and both of them work with children in the context of families. However, many times in these other programs, these target-driven programs, you work in the school but you never meet the parents, but you always think of the family. You always try to understand the family context of the child. In residential care, I think the focus is very much different. There's a longer term plan, but your actual child and youth care practice also, I mean, it remains. It's working in the moment. It's crisis as opportunity. It's trial and error. It's all of that remains. It's just, as I said, it's denser. You have to actually. It feels like denser and the intensity, but it is. It's definitely very different. And I think that people who have worked here with that fastness, I think, will struggle in a residential context, because you have your energy in residential is so different to your energy here. It's like, I want to say, in that energy, both of them have a therapeutic slant and approach, but somehow here, I want to say here, with the Impilo, the Isibindi, the community rapidness, I'm specifically thinking of health actually, and schools, where the fastness of things is for me what makes it very different. I cannot actually spend my whole day with the family, or 3 hours.
And just listening to you now, I mean, do you think that having those targets actually helps people to do better work?
It has both. It helps them to do better work, but also it helps them to find shortcuts. So I think the shortcuts are not always helpful. And sometimes people have found shortcuts that's okay, but it's not. I think people are thinking more now. How do I do child and youth care in this context with this family? We are thinking. We're talking about it a lot, because the one guy wanted to resign after a month in the program. He said, "This isn't child and youth care work." So I said to Marisha and Isabel, just sit with him and help him understand where the child is where the child and youth care worker must be, and can be the child and youth care worker. That is, and that I think they are beginning to realize that actually I can make a difference as a child and youth care worker, because that child has nobody. Actually, that youth in the clinic is not even telling his parents he's HIV positive. So now I have a child and youth care worker. The nurse is rude to them. The nurses are rude. They're very rude to them. And they literally scowl them and say, "You haven't been here for 2 months. Where were you?" Where the child and youth care worker, somehow just they're beginning to understand that actually, if I am the child and youth care worker, and I do this in this context, I am achieving exactly what a child and youth care worker should achieve. And that result, I think, it's all of it links to, and as Isabel and I were talking the other day, is that the relational stuff comes in here very differently, but it comes in here as a core. And I think with Zeni saying, when we talked about it, how do we do this? The rapport. Establishing rapport. If I don't understand how to establish rapport quickly, fast. So what one then has to understand is all the cultural dynamics that play in. Because we have got such a mixed culture. Now you have an Afrikaans speaking colored person going to have to establish rapport with a Xhosa speaking much older person or much younger person.
Yes.
How do you do that quickly? Or with the youth, that is a mixed group of youth, completely, with such diverse needs, actually, and different levels of academics. So you have a 9-year-old, or let's make it a 14-year-old, who's in a higher grade than a 16-year-old, in the same group. And to hold those things and establish rapport, and it's not easy. And we've had, in one group the other day, a child and youth care worker children became quite violent in the situation towards her. And another child and youth care worker actually stepped in and did excellent child and youth care work there. But it's very I'm just thinking of your question, what you asked me now, the difference between residential and this. No, it's very different.
Now that question was a long time ago. Now we were talking about relationship.
The relationship,
and you're talking about rapport and
all relational. If I don't understand how to establish the relationship, and they're not doing badly. They're not doing badly, because and both of them are not doing badly. But I think it also links to the understanding that unless I have a connection with this person, I'm not going to get this person to respond to the particular thing that I'm asking them to do. And there it's both. It's the FET and the BTEC person. It's not, both of them, I think, understand. And I mean, just as we were talking with them and saying, what is the key thing that will get you to get the patient to go back? And all throughout they understand it's the relationship.
Really?
Yeah, they understand that. Not your knowledge on HIV, it's the relationship. And there's not a lot of time to build the relationship. And I think that is really what should be taught, is how you do these things quickly, how you actually get results faster.
Yeah. So it's a lot, Sandra. It's a lot. You said a lot. But it's very rich. It's very interesting. Anything else about the nature of child and youth care work, or the roles and functions? I think you talked about the preparation. I think you talked about knowledge and skills and what else needs to be done. But anything else about roles and functions? Any other aspect of the work that you think is particular also to our context, South African, actually?
I think child and youth care workers have such a big expectation on them to be everything to everybody. It feels a little bit like that is what in a way we're expecting of the child and youth care worker. And to a large extent, the people who are well trained and have a little bit of experience begins to understand that for the child, how to be for the child in that moment, what the child needs. But I think that the roles and functions are so very vast, diverse in because your context and the country's context demands that vast, different, diverse responses from child and youth care workers. Now, we understand a child needs these things. We understand what the child needs. But that is in theory we understand it. When you get to the world where you actually face a child with all of, I'm thinking of this girl who was so badly burned and bitten by her mother, suddenly you realize the child needs that. In order to give the child that, I have to fix a whole lot of other stuff to even get close to that. So what is my role now? What has shifted here in terms of my function to make sure that this child can function optimally? Now, there is no such a thing as, I think, in South Africa, any child really functioning optimally in the context where we work. There is no such a thing. I think that's an unrealistic expectation completely. All you want to do is to make sure that this child is not killed today, is actually in school, is traveling, is able to move from A to B safely, and then has food. That is basic, very basic. So the role and function, we are often set up in theory to meet all of that and to be all of that and to make all of that happen. Then you hit the reality and you see, I'm just saying, fuck no, there is no ways I can get there. So then I become disillusioned and I say, how can they set me up to think that I can even do that with a family like this? And then you become hopeless and you say, well, I can only see that they have food and maybe this and that and that. So what now? I have failed as a child and youth care worker. And I think that's a dangerous place. It's a very dangerous place. So and that is maybe why breaking things down smaller units for child and youth care workers. So these are all the needs. This is what we need to achieve. But actually, long before you get there are these little units, these little things that must be understood, and that is what I think is not clear always. That actually what you've done here is you've given the child an opportunity by seeing that they stay in school. You've given the child an opportunity by saying, actually, yeah, they're going to have at least 2 meals a day. It's not adequate, but it's okay, they will survive. But it's really understanding what I learn in class is not what is going to be easy to implement and find as a child and youth care worker. The satisfaction that I'm looking for in my job is going to have to shift.
So the kind of expectations of what you can achieve and what in this context. And do you think that might be because our literature comes from someplace else where context is very different?
To a large extent, although theories of human development is
but child and youth care
child and youth care, I must say,
comes from somewhere else.
No, I think that it just needs more. It needs our stuff in that. It feels like if I think of the characteristics of child and youth care, if I think of child and youth care, the approach to how we, all the relational stuff, all of that is it has to be there. But I think there needs to be more embedded in it, and maybe it needs to be contextualized for people. So what do I mean about working in the moment with a child in a clinic as opposed to a child there? What does that moment mean? Because and what does it mean, trial and error in a clinic or in a school or in a residential care? What is that? And what is keeping a child safe? What is a child safeguarding policy? Flippin' hell, it's a 5-page document. There is no ways that I can say that in this context I can be sure this child will be safe, and then I can be safe, the safe person for the child. But then the rest I have no control over. A clinic and a whole lot of other things, hoping that actually all the other safety issues are in place by the clinic and by the doctor and all of that, but we know it isn't. So working in a third world country context, maybe yes, with first world theories and a lot of things that has come from elsewhere, but I think we need to bring ours into that. I don't think that it must be the one or the other. I don't think that must be removed necessarily. But I think that the expectation will shift once I understand that actually this theory applied here will look different to this, or this knowledge applied here, or this whatever applied here will look different to applied there or to applied there. The end result is also going to be different, because I cannot guarantee a lot of stuff in certain contexts. And because it's time bound, but time bound has shrunken now drastically. It has reduced my chances of success with a family or a child. And that's why the goals when I set up goals in the work for a specific child or whatever, for a family, because that's part of what case management is and care plans are, is that actually I'm setting up a plan and a goal to make it actually manageable and achievable. Because part of the expectation all around is to get this family to perfect. And what that perfect is different for every family, but actually the context lies also is different. Context creates a whole lot of different plans and goals. That's never even, I mean, there's no silver lining sometimes even. So you really have to create something that helps them to look forward to the next visit or to the next engagement or to the next something that you're going to be bringing in the next quarter when you visit them. So what is that looking like? So that you have I don't think that I don't think that what I have learned, certainly through a lot of the I want to say the human development stuff, the child and youth care specifics, isn't. I will not throw it away.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
I
But
would want
really,
to
what
enrich
you
it.
yeah, that's what you're talking about is actually contextualizing it.
Contextualize it, enrich it, enhance it with a lot of practice examples, a lot of, and I think that's what lacks often for us in our training. Even is you have people who train it who's very much a context specific person. So you would have somebody from residential care training, and people then come and ask a question. They have no insight into how on earth can you actually train somebody who works in a clinic. And I still think that the facilitators also is in a way in certainly in the academic environment, the lecturer has the knowledge, and that I think has to shift, because there's a theoretical component that you're teaching me, but actually I'm sitting there as a child and youth care worker with way more experience than you, but you're telling me that actually this theory is applied in this way and works in that way. And somehow for me there's not enough debate between the lecturer and the students. There's not enough space and safe space created for students. I felt I couldn't actually open my mouth at times in that class, because you would actually make the lecturer look stupid if you ask a specific something, or start talking about something in a different context.
Are you saying that you feel that the lecturer's experience of the work is not enough to be able to to kind of, I suppose, comfortably engage with what might come up? Yeah. And I think help child and youth care workers understand that actually this, what I'm giving you here, is context specific, and that actually there are many more contexts, and explore them, because we haven't yet explored them. So if I work in the justice system, what does that require of me? If I work here, and are you saying that they themselves don't understand those contexts?
They don't,
so
therefore
they can't actually take the students there.
No, definitely not. They've worked in a particular context, but that justice system is much broader than their experience. And theoretically, you can take people there. I mean, you can read up a lot. You can take people there. It's like saying a single person can't actually help somebody else with relational counseling. It's not that. We understand that life actually. Some people have. You can empathize. We understand that, but you have an expectation of a person who you are setting up to work in a particular context or environment, or you want them to be able to work as broadly as possible. And I think that isn't there. It's almost like I want to say it's the material, it's too narrow. It's really too narrow. Definitely not adequate on the case management and understanding how to set up a family through all of that.
Do you think that there's anything that might be particular in terms of like a South African version of child and youth care work. Do you think that I mean, you obviously as South Africans we don't necessarily know, so yeah, I mean you might feel like that you don't want to comment on that.
Well, I think I don't have a particular thought about that. I just think that we come with very much a solution-focused approach in South Africa. I must say, every child and youth care worker in this team, very few of them engage with something where they haven't come at least engaged with 3 or 4 options, or said, I've tried this, we've done this. It's really trying very hard to help a family, and feeling that if I don't get a lot of it right or whatever, I have failed this family. People somehow in this also feel sometimes quite demoralized actually in this team. We really have to up them and say, but you've helped them in this way. And I think so child and youth care workers expect of themselves a lot to have to find the answer or a response to this problem or so I want to not make it unique to South Africa, but it does feel like the intense dire situations they face feel like, can we at least just get them a food parcel? I wanted to ask you about those intense and dire situations and in a way, if I can put it that way, the horror of what they have to deal with. I want to say that one of the things that Marisha expressed very strongly when she moved from working in Mitchell's Plain to working in Bloemfontein and Wallerstein, she says, I have never seen such poverty and I don't know how to help. And it's like that is like, I don't know what to say to her. It's like, as a child and youth care worker, you step into a family's life, into a child's life, and you're there because you think you can make things better. But a lot of it is so concrete that you can't, because the resources are just not around you. So as a child and youth care worker, what do? You actually just start connecting, communicating, the relationship helps a little bit. Yes, we're going to try and get the grant. Yes, we're going to try and do all of these things. But the situation is dire now. That is all going to be put in place, but it's going to take 3 weeks or 3 months if we're lucky. So that context makes it ask something of a child and youth care worker that, of any human being, really. It's a social worker, child and youth care, the nurse, the community health worker, anybody who walks into that situation. So I have a role to play. But I think what is different to the community health worker walking in and the development worker is that as a child and youth care worker, you know a lot of stuff that you can make better through engaging with the family. And there is, problem solving is a huge skill that the child and youth care workers have. I really want to actually highlight it, saying they really think, they come up with ideas and they brainstorm about, and we do case conferences, and we will say, okay, I have these 4 or 5 cases, I don't know what to do. And the other day we were at YMCA, Isabel and I, and they brought like 3 or 4 cases immediately to us and say, what do we do here? And we put our heads together and talked, and it was amazing. They came up with it. Isabel and I didn't come up with it, but it's just getting the stimulation to get.
And what are the kinds of things that you're talking about? You're saying a situation like that where you go in and the resources aren't there, the situation is dire, and what do you do? So what do the child and youth care workers do?
So you have a situation where this one girl, was raped for 3 months by 5 men every day, locked in a room. At the clinic, her and her mother walks to the child and youth care worker and says, we've seen you here before. Literally a week before that she came out. She's HIV positive, and can you help us? The father, now they wanted to actually go to the house. The mother said, you cannot, my husband will not allow you into the house. The father, it's a long story, but the bottom line is we were sitting in a situation where the police alone now went with this child and drove this child around the community to try and find the perpetrators. She had the panic attack one after the other. So they said, what do they do? I said, she cannot be alone with the police. The childcare worker has to be with her, or her mother, or a social worker, but somebody who actually can hold the child's emotions with her, and then say, this is enough for today. We go back. So, I mean, that's an intense case that we're dealing with at the moment. And the father took their phones away and all of that. So they say, what do we do? The fathers won't let. Okay, then we say, in which school is she? So you go to the school. So you start working with her within the school context. And now the fathers don't let her go to school. So what do you do now? So you get the police in, but somehow the police is scared of that man. So what do you do now? So and it's big problems, not small problems. So it's that kind of thing, that they are so focused on really trying to help somebody who is in such a dire situation, and the police is on it. But actually nothing's happening. A social worker who's actually saying, I can't get involved. Literally saying, I can't get involved.
Why?
Because it's a case for the police. The police has to get involved. So he's saying, well, you have to get involved.
Yeah.
So no, it's complex. That specific one is now at the moment a very complex case. Yeah.
But you're talking about the idea of kind of finding different ways of interacting.
Yeah. And the mentor and the childcare worker was really saying, what do we do? So I said, well, when is her next appointment? Make sure you have a long time with her at the clinic. Spend a lot of time with her and her mother, and make sure you are there the morning 7. They're there at 7 o'clock, literally. And they met with her and the mother again. And it's a different story that now. But in any case, I think it's the I always want to call it the creative thinking, the solutions that come from a place that's child and youth care.
And do you think that they've been trained to that, or where does that come from?
I think a lot of the principles that we teach or approaches is that whole thing around creativity, and how do we work with families, trying to understand that actually we might not have the solution for the family, that the solution often has to come from elsewhere. And I think child and youth care workers understand that, that they don't have the solution for every situation. And what we have learned a heck of a lot in this program is you pull in all the resources that you possibly can from that community and people to help this family. And I think that girl who burned, for me, was really the most amazing story of how we pulled in the resources to help that family, to the point where actually the father is back. He's moved back into the house, back from the Eastern Cape. He's back with his 2 children. The family is together now. There's a long way to go. But and that family, the mother did a lot of the work, the father did, but they just needed that child and youth care worker to start pulling things.
What do you mean by pulling in the resources? What kind of resources?
Well, we had them referred to, many different people were involved. The social worker, so you had another agency involved, a child and youth care worker, parenting skills. You got the father, the sisters back through. I don't think this social worker contacted that social worker in another province. And now we're sitting with the teenager the other day, this girl. We suspect now she's been raped, because they said that it looks like she's pregnant, and she's saying she's never had sex. So now to understand what's happening here in this family, and the childcare worker and the mentor went in, and you can see, it was just a case where the clinic sister here and the clinic sister there, they're all people who we talk to now and say, so what happened here? What does the test say? What do we do?
All in the orbit of this family.
Yeah, and the one said no, she must go for termination. She wants to go for termination of pregnancy, but now the next test shows she's negative. So now we're saying, so what happened here? So we're not sure when there's a lot of stuff going on there, and we're saying, how do we respond here? So you have a case conference at Beautiful Gate and saying, so how are we going to deal with this case? So it's complex work that the child and youth care workers are expected to do, and as I say, sophisticated actually. But as you say,
we started talking about horror, about the
direness of things. And that unfortunately is not. You don't have a choice. You don't know what you're going to find. So you're stepping into a situation with a child, and you don't actually know what is the horror or the direness that you're going to see here. So sometimes people can't even respond to it properly. We've had child and youth care workers crying and saying, I can't work with this child, or the situation is, and a lot of it reminds them of their own lives, and they come from situations similar. But actually the resilience in this team is remarkable in the horror, with how they bounce back. That Mwazi, the cases that she's also been dealing with as a childcare worker now and a mentor, and now she's a mentor supervisor. Unbelievable resilience, unbelievable creative thinking in situations where I'm trying to think of some of her stories now, but I think she was robbed twice now already in just her own moving around the clinics and that. And she comes back, she says, no, I'm fine. And you try and debrief her and that, and she's spirited and resilient and bounces back. And she's, no, I'm fine. Nobody touched me. I gave my cell phone. And so the adaptability, actually, how people adjust to an environment is also remarkable. To a horror environment of you walk down the street and am I going to be robbed? And then you hear the child was robbed or whatever. So I'm talking a lot here, mixing the stuff up now, but finding a response quickly in that moment is very, very difficult. And I don't know if you can train people for that. I don't think that that's possible. I think you can help people, because you can help with role plays, maybe help people understand some of that. But to actually be in the situation and looking in the eyes of people who are in the horror situation, very different to a role play. But the role play, can give you some sense of it. But the expectation, I think, is real, is that families have very few people who walk in and say, can I help? Very few people. But a child and youth care worker somehow comes in and offers promise or hope. Not making a promise, but somehow the presence gives hope and promise. And I think with that then comes somehow an expectation that the child and youth care worker maybe put on themselves as well, is how that child and that mother can actually, you make sure they come back for medication, they have food to eat before they drink their tablets, all of those things. It's not easy.
Sandra, I think that's more than enough. That's actually, we've spoken for a long time, I realize it.
I love it.
I might come back to you.